Hey, Anthony. Just thought I'll jump in and welcome everyone to this presentation. Yeah, I don't know if Borg Martin liked that photo though. Yeah, I'd just like to welcome everyone to this, and most of you will probably know Anthony. You'll know his name at least. He's been around Moodle for a long time. Basically looks after all the kind of the plugin area of Moodle, the party plugins and that. And apart from that, is just genuinely a very nice guy, and so always willing to help people out, and has a lot of knowledge about Moodle and how the whole system works. So I'm sure you'll get something out of this presentation, whatever it is. So Anthony, thank you for your time, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Shane. Greatly appreciate it. So this presentation is about add-ons. And we've begun using the terminology add-on to kind of distinguish from other plugins that are part of core. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But add-ons is, I think, kind of the more preferred technical term. I know that we're all looking for and seeking, like 7 of 9, that perfection of our Moodle sites. So it would help me just to understand a little bit, kind of your role with your Moodle site. Are you a teacher, an admin? Are you working as a developer and interested in kind of developing some other plugins? Just kind of let me know kind of what your background is. And then I'd mention that I'm going to mute your microphone here. And that, I'd be interested in knowing kind of what plugins you've used and kind of your hopes for this session. Anything in particular you might want to know. So we have one admin, full autonomy. Okay, excellent. You get spoiled, Leo. I've been there, and then I've gone to having less autonomy on some sites, and it can be a little bit painful. Okay. So just a brief word about myself. I am a Catholic priest, currently assigned to a parish in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Immaculate Conception Parish. So I've already had 2 masses today, one in English and one in Spanish. And got to blow up balloons during Mass. It was part of my homily, so I had some fun this morning. I have a master's degree in counseling, and as a novice, Jesuit novice, I was sent down to work with Honduran gangs, and so I have an interest in, kind of delinquent youth and volunteer here at a juvenile detention facility, as well as going out to the county jail to hear confessions and say Mass and things like that. And I mention some of these things because they're not particularly tech-related. And so even though before joining the Jesuits, I worked as a database programmer for a state municipality. You don't necessarily have to have a great deal of technological background. When I first got involved with Moodle, I knew absolutely nothing of PHP. I did have some background in programming in general, but I didn't know PHP. I was new to open source and MySQL and things like that. So, I think you don't have to necessarily be a tech person to really get involved in Moodle and make a significant contribution to the community. And some other interests of mine are racquetball and being a Star Trek fan, and I find it interesting, the various interests throughout the Moodle community. And so if you haven't on Moodle.org in your profile added some tags about some of your interests, one of my favorites is Guinness, the beer. Please do that and kind of look and see if you can find people in the community, because I think sometimes the social component of Moodle.org gets overlooked, but I think it's really neat to kind of build up some of those connections with other Moodle users. I got involved with Moodle in my work at a Jesuit high school, and I was looking in my classroom, I was teaching theology, and I was looking in my classroom for how I could do things like online discussions, and I stumbled across Moodle and realized that not only could it do online discussions, but so much more. And around that time, well, I don't know if it's ever too early for Guinness, but I'll forgive that comment, Stuart. Around that time, the school was looking for a way of installing a learning management system for the school. And so I had suggested Moodle. It was very fortuitous because they asked me what kind of server would be needed for Moodle. And I gave them the specs, this is probably 8 years ago, and I said, well, a 3.0 gigahertz processor with about 4 gig of RAM and a 250 gigabyte hard drive, would probably be good to get us started. And so I had a student come in the next day and offer to donate a server that his father was no longer using from his business. I asked him for the specs, and they were exactly the same. So we got our school up and running on Moodle, its first Moodle installation, at absolutely no cost, which I thought was really cool. As I got involved with administering for this Moodle for the school, I would listen to the teachers. And I don't know if I've ever had a one-on-one sit-down conversation with someone about how they're using Moodle that didn't result in me filing some kind of issue in the tracker, either for an improvement or a bug fix or something. But we can learn a lot from our users. And so if you are a site admin, actually watching folks use Moodle is a great thing. Very early on, I started answering questions, especially the really simple ones, because I figured if I could answer the easy questions, then that would free up other people to respond to more technical type questions, and might even give the developers more time to develop. And so I got tagged as being a particularly helpful Moodler early on, and Martin noticed that I like to play and test kind of the latest software, the latest version of things, and so he asked me if I would, kind of tend to the plugins, which at the time was called Contrib, and kind of help organize that. And so I jumped on that and really enjoyed it, and have continued to enjoy seeing the way that people creatively design things for Moodle. I sort of look at myself as kind of being that one on the cutting edge that sees all of the cool things that people are trying, and so I greatly appreciate that perspective. I did write a couple of blocks. One was the birthday block for the school, and I think a lot of things, in terms of add-ons, well, how do you know what add-ons do you need, or what add-ons do you need to develop? And I think it really comes out of just talking to your users in your institution and seeing what their needs are. And so they wanted kind of a little bit of a social component to it, and we talked about adding birthdays, and I thought, well, there's the user profile field, and we could take advantage of that. And I used the code from the online users block and made some minor modifications to that and released it. And I think that's a good story for folks to keep in mind, because you don't always have to create everything from scratch. There's find something that's close to what you want, and then see if you can go in and tweak it, and that can save you a lot of time. And I also stole from MRBS, was another open source project for managing scheduling other resources. In our case, there was a computer lab, and so I migrated that from a separate project and pulled that into a Moodle block. And so that's been pretty popular, and folks have really liked that. The thing that I was amazed of when I contributed the birthday block was how quickly people responded to it. It was, within a few days, I had a few translations. I think one was Japanese, one was Portuguese. I speak Spanish, and so I provided English and Spanish. But it really just amazed me, how quickly the community really responds when you share something. And then not too long after that, people started making suggestions for improvements. They said, it's great that, you put this and the dates have to be in month, day, year format, because at that time there were no user profile types. Everything was just text. And so I had a very specific format that I was using, and they said, well, yes, but we don't do our dates that way. So it made me think about how can I improve this so that it's more universal and usable by others. And so I really appreciate that, the community will give you feedback, they'll give you ideas, they'll chip in and help you out as needed. So I see my role as the plugin facilitator really as being sort of a community facilitator as well, just helping people to find out how can I take my own talents and abilities and use those and put those at the service of the community. Get the benefit for myself, but also to help others. So if you're looking for how can I really get involved with the Moodle community and what contributions can I make, whether you're a developer or programmer or have a tech background or not, there are a lot of ways in the community for you to get involved and to really, I think, have a helpful voice and role in the community. So my objectives for this presentation is to clarify, the difference between a Moodle plugin versus an add-on, and so kind of to push that new terminology, to identify the various types of Moodle plugins, which I think is really key to identifying how to address some of the challenges that you might face. So I'll spend a little bit of time on that. To discover and assess Moodle plugins shared by others. I think, how is it to assess the plugins that people have shared to determine whether it's really going to be a good fit for my site and that it's something that I want to put in on a production site, or how to put it on a production site. And then quickly just running through how to integrate those add-ons into your Moodle installation, and then how to support and participate in the community. There are a number of pieces of information that I try to get maintainers when they're adding a plugin to Moodle plugins. I try to make sure that those pieces are there to facilitate that collaboration between the developer of the plugin and the users of it. And so, Moodle plugins is, it used to be that we used Moodle database, the database activity module, to manage all of the code that people wanted to share with the community. And we moved away from that to something that's custom written specifically for managing plugins. And this gives us the flexibility to make things, I think, more automated in a number of respects, but also more flexible and helpful for us. So, we're constantly seeking perfection. We're seeking to improve upon the process of making it easy for people that are looking for plugins to find them and get them installed on their sites, and easier for those who are contributing those plugins for adding that and sharing that information and then working with the rest of the community. Okay, the 505 is me, Shane, so I'm calling in because my microphone doesn't work on my computer. So what is the difference between a Moodle plugin and a Moodle add-on? The M in Moodle stands for module. The idea is that trying to make sure that folks are muted to come in. The M in Moodle is modular, and so the idea is that drop in a piece of code and it'll work independently, and it's not going to mess up other things. And so if I have a filter or a theme that I want to use, that I can add that to my site and not think that or have to worry that it's going to break, say, the quiz module. And so Moodle is very much designed to be kind of a plug-and-play environment where you can drop things in, you can take things out, you can say, hey, my users don't use, say the lesson module, and so you could disable that on your site, and it's not going to cause other things in your site to break by doing that. So each plugin is really meant to be independent. And it doesn't mean that there can't be sometimes some dependencies, but by and large, when you download a plugin, you shouldn't be having to download a bunch of other things. And the one thing that you certainly shouldn't have to do is make any core modifications, and that's one of the things that I look out for when I review code, is when someone submits a Moodle add-on or a plugin, I try to make sure that there are no instructions in there that say, oh, you have to go into, Moodle lib and make some modifications to that in order to get this to really work. Those are considered patches, and generally speaking, patches now as being bad. And so, but we will allow folks to share that, but it's in the other component of Moodle plugins, and I try to make it an exceptional case and encourage folks to really work around that whenever possible. So a Moodle plugin is something that increases the functionality of your site. And so this is part of what made me think of, the board, was that, we're constantly seeking out new plugins to assimilate into our site and, allow that to become part of our own. And so, as I've said, they're meant to be able to be dropped in, to be activated, deactivated without, causing massive destruction. So Moodle plugins refer to, anything that you can add into Moodle and to expand its functionality. So if you add a new theme, that theme is considered a plugin. Even things within Moodle core, such as the assignment activity module, one of my favorite filters, the activity name auto-linking filter, these are all plugins. And so an add-on is the same thing as a plugin, except it's not maintained by Moodle HQ. It's not part of Moodle core. And so it's something that you add on to Moodle to expand its functionality. And so, I'll say that all add-ons are plugins, but not all plugins are add-ons. Some of the plugins are part of Moodle core. That's the distinction that we make there. Moving on to the different plugin types. In Moodle 2.3, they rewrote the assignment activity module, and they added two types, the submission and feedback types. And I give the path here in your Moodle installation of where you would have to add these files. Prior to Moodle 2.5, you sort of needed to understand, well, what type of plugin am I working with, and where on the site does it get installed? And so occasionally you would get folks writing in saying, well, I downloaded the birthday block, but I keep getting these errors because I installed it into the activity module folder. And so obviously that's not going to work. It needs to be in the right place for Moodle to know how to treat it. And so the assignment submission type determines what and how a student can submit an assignment. And so like one of the plugins is a YouTube submission type, and so students can submit YouTube videos. Another is an audio recording submission type where they could add in, just hit a button and make a recording and submit that. And so the idea is that, you can change the type of assignments, the way that students are submitting assignments through the assignment submission type. Similarly, feedback types, how does the teacher then respond to that submitted work? And so one of the more creative ones, I think, has been the upload PDF feedback, assignment feedback. There's also an upload PDF assignment submission, and the two of those work best together. And when that happens, when there are two plugins that may not necessarily be dependent on one another, but that work well together, we can create a set. And so in Moodle plugins, which is at moodle.org/plugins, if you see there's a thing there about sets. A set refers to a number of plugins that tend to work best together. And sometimes there's a dependency, but not necessarily. And just to be clear, a dependency is, say, something like the feedback activity module also has a feedback block. Well, it wouldn't make any sense to have the feedback block without the activity module. And so that block in the version PHP file would declare that it is dependent upon the Moodle activity, or the feedback activity being installed. And so if it's not installed, when you try to install the block, you would get an error, a warning message telling you, I really need the feedback activity module to proceed. So Moodle tries to take some steps to ensure that you're not getting yourself in a situation where you have code installed on your server that it's not going to work because it's dependent on something else. And so that's one of the pieces that I look at when reviewing a plugin. Sometimes folks will submit 2 or 3 plugins at the same time, and it's clear that one is kind of dependent on the other. And I make sure that they declare that dependency so that people don't get into situations where they have code on their server that's not working. Course formats. Course formats are about changing the layout, the presentation of a course. One of the real popular ones when I was in Sydney at the Moot there was the grid course format. And basically it takes the topics course format and rearranges it so that there's a graphic image that kind of represents that, and then you click on that to see the particular topic. And there's collapsible topics is another popular one that similarly collapses them. And the idea was to avoid the long scroll of death. And so if you want to change the way that your course is being presented to students, the layout of that, course formats are kind of what you would want to look at. And so when you go into moodle.org/plugins and you start looking, you're asking yourself, well, what do my users need? How can I help them make better use of Moodle? Are there tools out there to kind of help them? And so listening to kind of their complaints. And one of the things that I really tried to get across to teachers is, and it's, I think, a tremendous resource and something I really valued in the open source community, is that complaining is actually a good thing, and that they do have a voice, and letting them know that, and to make that voice heard, to not be shy. And so, encourage, I think, as if you're a site admin, I would really encourage you, to let your teachers know it's okay to tell me the things that you don't like about Moodle, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to improve it, or the only way that I'll know that it's not meeting your needs, that you have another need. And so, please do encourage that. Themes change the appearance of your site, and there are a number of themes that have been shared with the community. And so with all of the plugins, before I approve them in Moodle plugins, I've installed them on a test server. I've looked, at least skimmed the code to try to make sure that there's nothing that is at least obviously malicious in there. And just kind of test it and give some feedback to the maintainer that's going to be, that shared the code, and let them know kind of my initial perception, how it works. If there are PHP warnings or notices that it generates, I run it with debug mode set to show me, any and all messages. And so it's really just it's an opportunity to give them a heads up. if other people start installing your code, what is their experience going to be like? And I try to get as many of those major issues fixed beforehand, before I approve it. So just in case folks are wondering, my goal, although it's seldom realized, but my goal is to try to get a turnaround time of about 48 hours. That said, all of the work that I do with Moodle, I do on a volunteer basis, and so sometimes my other job, my paying job, as they say, takes precedence and prevents me from really staying on top of plugins as much as I would like. And so currently I know that there's about 30 plugins waiting to be reviewed, and each one takes probably about an hour to do so. And so in terms of help and support, Richard, Apu at Moodle headquarters is now full-time working with plugins as well. And so I still try to do most of the review of the plugins and let him kind of work on a lot of the coding and improving of the system itself, and just kind of reporting issues to him. But we're working together, and he's doing a great job. I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, sometimes I do get backlogged, and it takes some time to get caught up. And so if you share a plugin, please be patient with me in going through that process. I've been really impressed though by folks that do share code. They're incredibly positive in responding to feedback. And so sometimes I'll ask them to rename things, or it's one of the things that I look for, that they don't submit something that's so generic that it could be anything, and so but yet descriptive enough to be helpful to people. And so, but I find that folks have really been really good about responding to that feedback. Activity modules are things that where you want the student to get involved and submit something, create something, share something with the class. And so the classics in Moodle Core are things like forum discussions, quizzes, are activity modules. And so things like Big Blue Button are activity modules. And so you can add those into the course, and then students come in and interact with that. Blocks are those little blocks on the side that typically give you information about the course, about your grades, or all kinds of blocks. But anytime you want to present some type of information to your user, a lot of times that's done by a block. Prior to Moodle 2.0, when we introduced the local plugin type, some folks would use blocks and just have them not be displayed to kind of do some background work. But now we really encourage folks, if you have some general background functionality that you want, to use a local plugin rather than using the kind of hacky block that doesn't show or do anything concept. So repositories and portfolios. These are ways of getting information in and out of Moodle. So Moodle made, I think, a very wise decision back in Moodle 2.0, that they didn't want to create a document management system. They said that they want Moodle to be able to use, other document management systems and to interact with them. So things like Alfresco or Nuxeo, or Dropbox or Google Docs. We just want to make it easier so that Moodle can go out and connect to any number of services that manages files and pull those in. And so sometimes folks have their own system for doing that, and they could write a repository plugin to help the user go out and get that. If you're a developer on Moodle.org and you're sharing an add-on to the community, I like to highlight the GitHub file repository. if you're hosting your code on github.com, you can go out and click on that repository and browse, put in your name, browse your repository, find the branch that you're looking for, and Moodle will pull in the zip file for you. The only trick there is I think there's an advanced option to allow it to rename the root directory, and if you do that, then it'll rename it so that you don't get any errors when you're adding that plugin, or that version. So folks that are using GitHub, if you want to submit a new version of your code, that GitHub file repository is pretty slick. Portfolios are about getting information that is in Moodle and pushing it out into that other system. And so Mahara is probably the most popular portfolio kind of system that folks using Moodle are familiar with because it's a great open source project. The plagiarism plugin type, this allows for you to obviously check the student's work to see how much of it is found in other people's work. And I think it's a great example of how Moodle has worked with some subscription-based or commercial services and is open to that. So things like Turnitin.com and Urkund are two popular plagiarism APIs. There's also Crot, which is a free one. But if you want that functionality, that's the type of plugin, the plagiarism plugin type. Looking at question and question types. So question types are, anytime you want to change the way that you present an information to a student, say on a quiz, and get them to respond to that. The common question types are things like true and false, multiple choice. But there's, a neat one that OU has contributed where you can have them drag a word onto an image. So if you wanted them to identify, say, different countries on a map of the world, they could do that. And so if you want to expand, the types of questions or the way that you're asking questions in a quiz, question types would be the area that you would want to look at. Question formats are basically how to get questions in and out of the question database. And so, how do I import and export questions? In core, probably the most popular one is, at least the one that I've used the most, is GIFT. And so I think there's one that allows GIFT with images in plugins. And sometimes what happens is folks will, kind of start sharing a plugin, and it becomes so popular, or the functionality is, good that Moodle Core actually, wants to incorporate it. That Moodle HQ wants to incorporate that code into Moodle Core, and so that's, I think, one of the great benefits of, having add-ons and plugins in general. Is just that we can get the whole community involved in writing code, improving code, looking at the functionality that's needed, and then Moodle HQ can kind of evaluate that and then determine what's going to be to the benefit of the community as a whole. Question behaviors is an area that I've not looked at carefully, and to be quite honest, I don't quite understand. And so I kind of say, ask Tim Hunt or someone at OU to explain question behaviors. Just not familiar enough with it to really be of help. Authentication types, you may want your user, how does your user log in and authenticate to Moodle? And so things like SAML and OAuth 2 are common add-ons to Moodle that allow you to kind of use Google or Facebook type login credentials. So depending on what authentication type you're using at your institution, your users, there's a lot of flexibility there already in Moodle Core, but if it's not in Core, you add that plugin type to your server. Enrollment types just determine how students get enrolled in courses, and so there are some that have been created that help a student to automatically get into a course, and so that's nice. Filters, I think, are really neat and a great time saver. And so basically it says, you know, any time a user puts in information in a particular format, you know, that it'll be kind of, it's sort of like a search and replace. And so when Moodle finds that information, it'll swap it out. And so things like, you know, if I put in a link, you know, it'll make it a URL. If I put in an activity name that already exists, you know, and I have the activity module auto-linking filter already enabled, then it will switch that name, that text, into a link to the activity. So it's filters are a pretty neat area. Obviously, reports, there are all kinds of reports, but grade reports. Local plugins I've talked about, just kind of general system type plugins. An example of one would be the there's a general messaging one that, well, it's not general messaging, global messaging. And so it'll send a message to anyone that's currently logged in to the server, and so that's helpful for admins to let them know that the server is going down in 5 minutes or something like that, that they need to save their work. Message outputs, Moodle allows folks to receive notifications in a variety of ways, whether it's by email or Moodle message. There's an SMS plugin or add-on that allows them to use the message outputs. Reports I've kind of already talked about. Admin tools are, you know, just kind of background things that an administrator might want to do to the site. And so, you know, like one in core is converting from my ISAM to INNODB, so converting your database. So anytime that you want to do that, a really neat one is kind of a replacement for PHPMyAdmin called AddMiner, which is able to be used in a variety of with different databases, so it's not restricted to MySQL, but I think Postgres and a couple others. And then user profile fields, as I mentioned when I was talking about the birthday block, when they were initially introduced, it was just text that you could put in there, but now you can put in dates and drop-down boxes and all kinds of things. And so, you know, if you want to add a particular user profile field, you can do that. So any questions? I'd be interested in hearing about some add-ons that people have used on their sites and found helpful. If you could share that information with each other in the chat, and I'll continue to proceed. The advantage of add-ons is that you do get the expanded functionality, but there is a word of caution when installing them on your site. And that is that they aren't maintained by Moodle HQ. So there may be security issues because my review is, like I said, a very superficial review. You know, I try to catch things, you know, like if they're not sanitizing the data with optional param and required param, you know, I try to, you know, catch that, but it's possible that something might slip by, and it's not an exhaustive type of security testing. One of my hopes is that the Moodle partners will provide some of this testing and that we can kind of collaborate a little bit better, that in terms of doing a code review, that if a particular organization wants to sponsor the review of a plugin, it would have to be for each version of that plugin. But if they review it and say that it's met, you know, kind of all the security protocols, and there are no security issues in it, that we could then award it, say, a security award, so that you would know, yeah, this has been reviewed by a Moodle partner and is secure. So the whole plugins ecosystem, I think, is really developing, and I'm excited about that. And So, and also very open to your suggestions about how that can be improved, things that we need to do to make it better. So any ideas that you have, you know, as you kind of start to poke around and use it, you know, feel free to send me an email at anthony@moodle.org, and I'm happy to kind of consider that and how we can improve things. Probably the biggest issue folks face with add-ons or plugins is when they want to upgrade their Moodle site. And if that plugin has not been upgraded to the latest version of Moodle, there may be some issues. This issue should really be in decline. I know when Moodle went from 1.9 to 2.0, there were a huge number of API changes, kind of back-end changes to the way Moodle worked that required all of the plugins to be completely, well, not completely, but rewritten and recoded. They just wouldn't work in the new version. This is becoming less and less an issue, and when it is an issue, Moodle HQ is much more intentional about documenting API changes, and so you can look at the release notes for a particular version of Moodle and see what API changes there have been made, and so for plugin maintainers, they can look at that and see, does any of this affect the code that's in my plugin? And if not, then they can go ahead and say yes, test it, and go ahead and make sure that the version is, that the plugin is listed as being available for that version of Moodle, that it's been tested on that version of Moodle. But there may be, you know, usability, stability, performance issues, you know, with a plugin that doesn't go through the type of unit testing and code review process that the Moodle code is. So before installing an add-on to your server, especially if, you know, like Leah, you have that free reign to do whatever you want, please, please, please do a backup. I can't, you know, emphasize that enough, of your database and your Moodle files. So make sure you have a good, solid backup. And really, I wouldn't recommend just installing it on a test server, or I mean on a production server, without having first installed it and played around with it on a test server. And if possible, you know, use your backup to create your test server so that you have production data on that test server, that you can get a realistic idea of what it's going to look like on your server. And again, depending on your institution and how large it is and complicated, you know, you need to be more careful about testing. And the other thing I like to kind of call folks' attention to is to be patient with the maintainers, because usually they're volunteers. Even if they've been paid to write the code, you know, say by a company, you know, they're sharing it with the community, and their maintaining of it oftentimes is just a labor of dedication and love on their part, so, and a desire to be helpful. I find, like I said, most of the maintainers to be really wonderful to work with, but oftentimes they're not receiving any type of compensation for that work and their effort, and so, you know, just, you know, treat them kindly. I think it would be a good rule of thumb. So how do you find Moodle add-ons? How do you discover them? Seeking them out. You can browse the Moodle plugins by type. So we've talked about the various types, and that was not an exhaustive list, but there are other types, but it gives you the idea. And so you may say, yes, I'm looking for a theme. I'm looking for a filter, and so I want to go in and look and see what's available, or a course format. You can search by a plugin name if you're reading in the Moodle.org forums, and you see that, you know, yeah, this Turnitin.com plugin is supposed to be really great. You can go in here and type in the name of the plugin and search for it by name and find it. Or you can review, we're gathering stats on plugins and add-ons in terms of the number of downloads, and so you can get a sense from there what are the most popular ones. So assessing the plugins, I think the first thing to really look at is, do I need it? Is this necessary for my site? Is it going to, in fact, add value for my users? And so I think, first look at, that question. And I think you assess this by looking at the description of the add-on in the plugins listing. And so read the description carefully and make sure it does what you want it to do and need it to do. How many times, download, test it for my version of Moodle. Make sure that, the version that you're downloading is, in fact, designed to work for your version of Moodle, because there are occasional changes to the API that may make it so that it doesn't work. And so certainly test on a test server if you're using something, say, that was listed as being for 2.4 and now you're running 2.5. Certainly do a little bit more thorough testing on that, because it hasn't really been tested on 2.5 yet. How popular is it? Do you recognize the maintainer? I found that most maintainers have been around for about 5 years or so, of the more popular ones. Looking here in the chat, can I comment on feedback activity? It's in core and has been for some time, but still disabled by default. Yeah, I kind of question that myself, Stuart. That Survey 2 seems to be, being slow in coming out. I know it's going to be a big project. Last I checked on it, I asked, and I was told that it is still being worked on. I don't know if it'll be a 2.6 feature. I'm hoping so. I feel like we've been kind of promising it to folks for a while, so it would be nice to be able to do that. Overkill with Addons. Yes, it's always best, err on the side of caution with your production sites. The beauty of a test site is that, you can always just delete it if it gets messed up, and, lessons learned. So, yes, please test. And if you install an add-on, don't be shy to kind of reach out to the maintainer and let them know, I've installed your code, I'm using it, I like it, I find it helpful, I wish it did this, so, like I said, most developers love hearing from users. There are reviews. We have trusted members of the community that will write an official review of a version of a plugin. And if you're interested in becoming a reviewer, we're looking for members that have been around for a while in the community, that are knowledgeable, that they'll be able to install the add-on and give it a good critical review. And so some of the things that, Gavin, who's done a number of the reviews, he gives some background, describes what it does. Is it easy to install? Is there good documentation? Is it easy for the teacher or admin to use? So what's the user interface like? And things like that. So Gavin's done a great job of doing reviews. And so if you're interested in becoming a reviewer, I think we could always use more. Like I said, Moodle plugins is really developing. And so the more people that we can get involved in that process, I think the better, to really kind of help that out. Awards, again, we don't have that many awards yet. Occasionally we'll give an award to like a really cool plugin just to kind of draw some attention to it. I think, that security award would be a nice one to have. So all of these things continue to remain in development. And so, if you're able to help out in that regard, please let us know. Comments. On each plugin, there's the ability to leave comments. And comments has always been a bit of an ambiguous area. At one point when we were using the database, there was no way for the developer, those comments weren't being pushed to the developer. They had to come in and look for them. But now they're able to be pushed to the developer. But there's this fine line because we want comments to be your general impression of the plugin. It's really good. I like it. It helps me. It saves me a lot of time. Comments about the plugin and how it works for you and your users. More technical things. I'm getting a PHP notice on this page on this line of code. That would really probably be best made into an issue, a tracker issue. And I'm trying to ensure that all of the maintainers provide the link to the source code so that folks can go in and see that. A link to a tracker issue of some type. So GitHub has its own issue tracker, but if folks want, I can create a component in Moodle Tracker for them. I want to make sure that there's a documentation link, and now we're beginning to try to push for a discussion link, so a place in the forums to discuss it. And so sometimes, with an add-on, you may want to improve it, or you have some suggestions for it, and you're like, well, here's an idea I have about how I've used it. Do other people, do this as well? Well, that's really a discussion for the discussion forums. An issue or a problem that you're having, that's best in the tracker. And comments is just kind of, giving comments about the plugin so that people who are looking at it will have very quickly kind of be able to assess, is this good? Is it helpful? Does it do what it says it does? Thumbs up, thumbs down type things. So I also really encourage developers to provide screenshots so that you don't even have to install it. It used to be if you were going to install it, you had to download it, unzip it, copy the code into the right folder on your server. It was a much more drawn-out process. As I'll discuss shortly, the installation process in Moodle 2.5 is greatly simplified. But one of the things that I do when I review the plugins is I really push for the maintainers and those contributing the code to add in these links. Not so much as a dictator, but really just trying to ensure that the community as a whole will have a consistent experience when they come to look at a plugin, and that they can assess it pretty quickly and easily. It's going to be useful for them. So as I mentioned, prior to Moodle 2.4, you would have to download the zip file, copy it to the server, which meant you had to have access to the server. Another method was to use Git, and if they're using a Git repository or some other concurrent versioning system, to have that code on your server and be able to go out and do that, link to that repository and pull the code in. I would still encourage Git if you're a developer and you're looking at code and you're wanting to work with the maintainer of code and make patches available to them and things like that. I think Git is a great way of doing that, especially on your test server. But even sometimes I think on a production server, I still find Git pretty helpful because, just in terms of upgrading, I've got a couple scripts that I've written that will go out and make sure that that server is updated, and there's a command line interface for doing the upgrade process. And so it really saves a lot of time and eliminates downtime. So I still think there's a place for Git, but I think it's mostly for developers and some system administrators who are comfortable with some scripting. In Moodle 2.5, there is now a login button. There's now a button for installing an add-on when you log in as the administrator. And so you can simply go and you click on Install an Add-on from the Moodle Plugins directory, and it will take you to Moodle Plugins and allow you to browse around. And there's also an interface here if you want to add the zip file and choose the plugin type, and click on the agreement here, the fine print, that you understand that I could totally mess up my site by doing this and that I'm going to be responsible for that. So this option is available in Moodle 2.5. Now, I do want to say that, partners, Moodle partners, there's an option in config.php to disable this functionality, and many of them have done that for obvious security reasons. They don't want code that they have not carefully reviewed running on their production servers. But certainly on your test servers, you can set this up and play and look at things, plugins. And so you click on this, add a plugin, and it will take you to the Moodle plugins page where you can search, browse, and look around. And then, you say, okay, well, I found, I'm looking in blocks, and I think I want to add configurable reports. And if the current version of your site matches a version that's available for that plugin, you will see the install button. Otherwise, you'll just see the download button. Okay, Teresa, have a great rest of the iMoot. Thanks for joining us. You'll click on the install button, and it will ask you to confirm that you're making a request to install that block, and you say continue. Then it'll look at the zip file, and it'll validate it and make sure that there are certain minimal criteria that zip file meets, namely that it is in fact a valid add-on for Moodle. And if that passes and doesn't give you errors, then you continue. And then it'll begin the installation process and ask you to upgrade the Moodle database. And so you click on the push button to do that, and then it'll go through and tell you that your installation was in fact successful. And then it'll give you the option to set up any configurations for that add-on that you need. And so you can save that. So any config settings that you need to set. And then you're done. And as I mentioned, you can also add the zip. So say, the button wasn't available and you're running a 2.5 site, but you're pretty comfortable that the 2.4 code will work. You can drop that zip file in there, select the type, click on the little checkbox button, and you're good to go. And it'll install it for you. You can delete plugins, but you'll have to have access to the server to remove files so that they do not get reinstalled. This is an area I'm planning on filing an issue in the tracker on so that we're consistent with being able to install I lost my connection. Give me just a second. I'm back. Refreshing my browser. Audio. Okay. So you can delete plugins, but currently you have to have access to the server to do that. I want to make it so that if you can add on to Moodle, that you can also delete it, and that it'll get deleted from the server as well. Currently it requires write access that the Apache user, the web user that you're using, can write to the server. There are some security questions about that, but in any case, I just want to make sure that if you can add a plugin, that you can also remove it. Interestingly enough, some plugins do this for us automatically, and so like the themes, and if you add a theme, it'll tell you when you go to remove it, do you want to remove the plugin folder now? So there's a little inconsistency here that some plugin types are in fact removing the folder for you and others are not. And I just want to make sure that it's a consistent experience. So I think there's a little room for improvement there that we'll work on. Okay. So I really want to encourage folks to participate in the community. If you use an add-on, to please make sure that you're willing to kind of communicate back to folks and let them know issues that you're having, problems. If you have a problem with a plugin, share that information with the developer and help out with documentation, discussion on the forums, and if you're able to help translate things, do that. So I say, experience is irrelevant. Allow your own experiences to become part of the Moodle collective. We really are stronger as a community. I think there are some ideals from the board that we can learn from. And when we really participate and collaborate together, I think the community can really be a force to be reckoned with. What about upgrading plugins in 2.5? Do we just reinstall it the same way? If I recall right, and I've just not tested this yet on 2.5, but I believe when a new version is added to a plugin that you have, just like with Moodle Core, it'll go out and let you know that there's a new version available and for you to upgrade, and it gives you an option to do that. I believe you can do the same thing with plugins. I'm pretty sure of that. So if an update is available for your version of Moodle for that plugin, you should get a notification for that and be able, through the site, to download and get the latest version and have it upgraded. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I put my certainty at probably around 80% on that. So plugins continue to evolve, and your participation in that, in letting me know things that you look for when assessing a plugin, if you're having trouble getting that information. We do have kind of, the most recently downloaded is available there when you're browsing plugins. And so I have some suggestions that I created an issue already for adding some filters. One suggestion came up, for example, about language, so that you could say, I want to know all of the blocks that are available in French, and I just want to see what those are. So things like that, being able to kind of filter down and see what's really happening. So ideas that you have, just please let me know. I'm happy to take those into consideration and work toward implementing those. So hopefully using add-ons now is easier than ever. So assimilation should be easier. All of your 2.5 Moodle sites come equipped with the equipment for assimilation. So hopefully this will continue to develop, and we'll continue to see more great plugins that really do help perfect our Moodle sites. So with that, I want to open it up to questions, comments, your favorite uses of add-ons. I'm going to go back and review the chat here a little bit, but feel free to grab the microphone and share with us any questions you might have. I'll just, kind of put in a little plug here. Michael Durant, put out a book that I know is available on Moodle plugins, and so if anyone has the link for that, if they could post that in here, I think that would be a good contribution to folks. Farm duties sounds interesting. Have fun, Leo. Yeah, I think being able to search based on language and version of Moodle, and there was another one that I put in there. I forget what it was. Plugin type, obviously, but yeah, basically being able to help folks kind of drill down to what they're looking for, kind of more quickly and easily. I think is. Any other comments, questions? Maureen, Mervyn, Richard, Lange, and Stuart. Stuart, you have the site up, don't you? That has like 50 different add-ons. Yeah, thanks, Richard, for the link to the book by Michael and Gavin. I reviewed that book, and so I do know it's, yeah. Okay, yeah, there it is, the Dev Moodle Byte. So if folks want to just kind of poke around on another server, they can do that. No worries, Maureen. Glad to have you here for the time that you were able to be here. Any other questions, comments? See how I, as the plugins facilitator, can be of better service to you? Yeah, some type of rating system. Ratings, it's always kind of tough. Do you think you'd prefer like the like, dislike, or maybe just a like, or a 5-star type thing, or there's always questions about how effective those are. Yeah, in a certain sense, I could see where the 5-star would work well because add-ons are a bit like apps. And so I think folks would kind of be familiar with that. And so, and I try to keep my eye on, I think Drupal has a great plugins module or kind of concept because similar to Moodle, they have a framework, basic framework that they're working from that folks then build up and add around. So I tried to look at how they manage. They call them modules instead of plugins, but concept is the same. And so I think also looking at places like app stores and seeing how those are organized and trying to get the best ideas that we can from there would be helpful. Okay, see you, Stuart. Cheers. Thanks for attending. I'll be at the Montana Moot, the Mountain Moot, as they call it, in Montana. Forward to that. So I don't know if any of you will be there, but it'll be an opportunity to meet each other in person. I've met Stuart at a couple of other Moots. Partners. Yeah, and that's kind of the question is how do you kind of rate, how do you give validity to certain people's ratings? And some users have more, kind of clout than others. So it does get a little tricky, but I'm certainly interested in people's ideas about how that could be implemented. You're all very welcome. It's been a pleasure to spend part of the afternoon with you or part of the morning for many of you. Appreciate you getting up. Richard, I forget, where are you from? You have supper time coming up? Okay. volunteers. 11:30 p.m. Yeah, it's a little bit late for supper for me, but well, again, I appreciate everyone's participation today, and was happy to share this information. Hope it was helpful, and look forward to seeing you around the Moodle community.
Many thanks, Anthony. Much appreciated.
Sure thing.